Monaco64 here, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. It's Monday, July 9th, 2018. Today I'm going to talk with Roshan Abraham from EOS Authority. They're one of the founding block producers for the EOS blockchain. So good morning, Roshan. Nice to be with you. Can you tell us a little bit about you, your background, and EOS Authority?
Yeah, great. Hi, Maria. Thanks for having us on your channel. It's really great to be here. So about me, I'm a software engineer. I've been building custom applications for various fintech clients for the last 15 years. So I'm a software engineer by background. And I've got into the whole blockchain space back with Bitcoin in 2013 and writing custom Ethereum smart contracts and so on from 2016. And we're looking at a way to scale the whole system and so on. So that's how I got into the whole Ethereum space and so on. And yeah, and then about EOS, I mentioned this to you earlier. It was quite interesting because I've been a long-term subscriber to your channel, I think for more than maybe a year or two. And back in, I think, October sometime, you were mentioning about how Dan is trying to make a Steemit platform that you can build Steemit on EOS and things.
Yeah.
So back in October sometime, I got started with EOS, running the testnets, going through the development channel. So yeah, that's one of the big benefits of watching you talk about EOS. So that's what we got interested in EOS. And that was around 7-8 months ago. We put quite a lot of work from then to get the block EOS Authority set up and all that.
Yeah, and can you explain to the viewers what it means that you are one of the founding block producers and how it works?
Great. So EOS has 21 block producers and around 29 standbys. So it's around 50 block producers. Unlike, say, Ethereum or Bitcoin, you have a set number of 21 block producers that produce 5% of the blocks. So the first round is each round, a block producer gets to make 12 blocks, pass it to the next block producer, they make 12 blocks, and it keeps going like that. So a block is where you have transactions. You can have 500 transactions in one block, and there are 2 blocks in 1 second. So that gives EOS 1,000 transactions per second. And once the 12 block round is finished, the next block producer gets a turn, and so on. So the how it's selected is the community gets to vote for the block producer, and the top 21 of the selected block producers get to produce blocks. The rest come in and go based on the votes and so on.
Yeah, and the votes can change as well because the rankings, I've noticed right now you're number 12, aren't you? And you've been higher than, you've been in the top 3. So does this mean that you and the people at EOS Authorities are constantly have to be working? Is that how it works? Because if the network is going to be 24/7, you would expect that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. And the whole voting is every 2 minutes, the top block producers are counted. So like a continuous ongoing election rather than having an election once every 4 years.
Yeah.
And then you get to see the next election. With EOS, you got an election like every 2 minutes.
Yeah, I could go and change my vote right now, couldn't I? And
Exactly. So people can just go in and change the vote at any time, and then that looks at the system counts the top block producer every time. So we were all the way from number 1 and 12. It keeps going quite a big swing all the time. And what's interesting with EOS is that we have around 50. So we have the top 21 that are active block producers. We have around 29 that are standby block producers. And then I just had a look at the stats recently. We were operational for the last, say, 4 weeks. We had 80 paid block producers. So you can imagine, like, although it's just 50 max, we had like around 30 that came in and went out at some point.
Oh, I see.
So it's a very, very decentralized kind of situation.
Oh, that's good. And can you explain to the viewers that are not too familiar with what we've been talking about, what exactly EOS is going to be doing, how it's going to change things in the internet and for the world? What you think is the main important thing that people need to know?
Great. So you explained it all in your YouTube videos very well, but Yeah, so just from my point of view, so based on what you mentioned before, so the whole idea with EOS is to be like the DApp platform so that a talented developer can come in and instead of focusing on the bare bones of how to build a Steemit, they can focus on just getting their unique proposition on top of the chain. So instead of if you want to build a new Steemit, you have to think of who the block producers are going to be, how it's going to be decentralized, and set up all those infrastructure components. But what happens with EOS is you just have to worry about that additional functionality that you like to build, like Steemit and so on, and just don't have to worry about the underlying mechanics of the blockchain. That's fundamentally where EOS is coming in, and we can see a lot of decentralized dApps that's going to come in the next, hopefully, the next few years or so.
And can you tell like the viewers how much quicker the scalability comparison with Steemit, with Ethereum, for example?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So if you look at, so let's say a simple application like Facebook, sorry, not a simple application. Let's say an application like Facebook, a simple component like the like button. So if you press the like button and if you were to put on Ethereum, what would happen is every time the user presses the like button on if Facebook was implemented on Ethereum, each like button you need to pay a transaction fee, the gas cost, and you need to wait for something like 45 seconds for just one block. I mean, let's say confirmations and so on. If you build the same system on EOS, a block is generated every 0.5 seconds. So you just press the like, and transactions are free. So users just like Steemit, you press the like button, the confirmation comes to you within 0.5 seconds, pretty much like using a normal web application out there, and it's a free transaction. So it's quite easy for a dApp developer to weigh out where you need to build your dApp. And on top of that, Ethereum can process something like far fewer transactions. The EOS can have something like 1,000 transactions per second. We just tested out in all the test nets, and pretty sure it hits that in the live. So yeah, it's quite easy comparison for a developer to make and decide what platform to run them on.
Yeah, and I guess a lot of people, the fudders, as you call them, the main point they make is that EOS is too centralized. Can you counter that?
Yeah, that's a very good point. So so I'll just explain what happens with Ethereum and Bitcoin. So I'm not picking on Ethereum and Bitcoin. They're really good platforms. They were the generation 1 and generation 2. They're very important steps that they played. But it's just comparing with, say, Bitcoin or Ethereum, you have these, it is true that anybody in the world can just download this Ethereum or Bitcoin software, run it on their own computer. It is that much is true. Theoretically, you can start contributing to the mining, but all practical purposes that would never work because you need to join something called a mining pool and contribute your hashing power there. So the last I looked up, something like 3 of the mining pools control more than 50% of the hashing power of Ethereum. So you can just think about it. So these 3 companies essentially decide what software to run for Ethereum and so on. If you compare that with EOS, you have 21 block producers. Nobody produced more than, say, 4.5% of the hashing power. So, and as I mentioned, we had 80 block producers come in and out of the standby. So I would say, if you look at the details, it is true in paper that anybody can start mining on their computer. But for all practical purposes, EOS is far more decentralized if you look at what's happening in reality.
Yeah, and who keeps track of whether, let's say, EOS Authority is doing a good job block producing or EOS New York? Who keeps track of that, and how can, because I don't know how to do it, for example, but
yeah, sure. So it's so the number one metric is to see how many blocks and how many blocks were missed by each block producer. So if you there are a lot of sites out there which tracks EOS tracker and so on. You can see how many votes they have, how many blocks they have missed, and so on. So that's a very good metric. You can see if the block producers are doing their job, and because I'm pretty happy about the stability of the whole EOS network. It's very rare that block producers miss the blocks. It's been doing very well. It looks like more and more people are measuring block producers now based on how much value they add to the community and so on.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So the title and the job role is block producer, but essentially you got a lot of other jobs, which
Yeah.
is equally important.
So how does it work? Like, for example, if when EOS network grows and you've got like maybe millions of transactions a second, how do the block producers keep track of all that? Like,
Yeah, that's a
it's
very good question. So this is another very interesting feature of EOS. So currently we know that EOS will have 500 transactions per block. Given that we have two blocks per second, it's easily 1,000 transactions per second. What's interesting with EOS is there is something called an inter-blockchain communication. So you'll have the main EOS here. A group of block producers or the community or whoever wants can set up something called a side chain. You have the main chain here. You can have as many number of side chains as required. And let's say you have an example CryptoKitties app. You don't have to run the CryptoKitties on the mainnet. You can create your own side chain, run the whole DApp on the side chain, and then just do a checkpoint once in a while to the main chain to communicate with the other DApps and other side chains. So what that gives is, theoretically, it'll give you infinite scalability. So you can have the whole Facebook. What Facebook could do is they would just come in and say, okay, we are creating our own side chain where all the transactions are happening on this side chain. Once in a while, we'll checkpoint to the main chain.
I
So
see.
if the main chain can do 1,000 transactions per second and one side chain needs, say, one checkpoint per second, you can have 1,000 side chains. And each side chain can have thousands of their own transactions. So it's like theoretically infinite scalability
Wow,
over there.
very very interesting. And what else did I want to talk about? Oh yeah, I've noticed, because I've signed up for your updates, EOS Authority. So sometimes I get emails from you warning me that I've gotten activity in my account. But it's a good warning because it's airdrops. So when
Okay.
I check my EOS wallet right now, I use Simple EOS.
Yes,
Uh,
great.
I've realized now that aside from my EOS tokens, now I've got nine other tokens that have been airdropped. Uh, and how long do you think it would take for these? Because these tokens represent decentralized applications, right? How long do you think it will take for them to evolve and like be up and running?
Yeah, good. So just to clarify with the viewers, so you're talking about the EOS Authority's alerting system.
Yeah,
So we have this Telegram and the email system. So we have like thousands of people that have registered since about a week of us launching it. A lot of there was even an interesting incident where somebody had an active key and an owner key with EOS, and they managed to set it up their active key and their owner key separately. And somebody contacted us saying that they got an alert that there was a transaction happening that they didn't authorize because they had this active key and owner key and they had voted for a block producer. They could see a transaction alert come into them saying that somebody has unstaked their token. And then what happened was they could quickly go in, change the active key, and then they didn't have their funds stolen. So it's a very nice point you mentioned. So I'm very happy with people mentioning these things, but yeah, it is really good to see that most of the alerts are just, hey, you have this new airdrop, which is
yeah, yeah. That's
which is
that's
good.
good. Yeah. Can you
Yeah. So
talk? Can you talk a
on
little bit about RAM? And explain to the layperson like me what it is exactly and why it's creating some polemic within EOS community.
Yeah, perfect. Let me just go to my screen. I want to give your viewers the correct numbers. So what is interesting about the RAM system is, let me just open up a site. So there is this, so all the RAM trading, all the funds generated from the RAM trading, they go into this address called the eosio.ram RAM fee. So each time a RAM is purchased or sold, there is a 0.5% transaction fee at each time. So the current balance in the EOS.io.RAM free is approximately 1.3 million EOS tokens. So what's happened so far is, okay, so we know that to run the EOS network, block producers get 1% of the annual inflation every year. So for a 1 billion market cap EOS, so that's a 1 billion tokens outstanding. The 1% is something like 10 million a year. You divide 10 million by 12 months, it's something like 800,000 EOS tokens are paid to block producers every month to keep the network going. And so far, in less than 4 weeks, we have 1.3 million tokens in RAM trading fee, which is completely locked away and it's burned forever. So essentially, EOS is deflationary if you think about it, because 1.3 million tokens are traded in, and that is kept as a burnt fee. And then you have just paying 800,000 EOS to the block producers who run the network. So the first point on the RAM is that essentially this whole trading was set up, and there is a lot of speculation, but the one good point is that it's kind of paying for in more than the cost of running the network.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. That's something that was Dan was mentioning about this, that this could happen in theory, and it's nice to see that it's almost double the fee that is paid to block producers.
Oh, yeah.
That's kind of interesting.
I saw yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So that's the first point regarding the RAM trading. However, the main idea of EOS is to be the underlying DApp platform, and airdrops now. I think the last airdrop, some challenge airdrop, was launched, and they paid something like $200,000.
Yeah, I heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, which is kind of we had like back when EOS was launched, we had almost one airdrop every other day, but now I think it's just $200,000 just to lock up for RAM is kind of expensive. So I'm sure. So the short term and long term. Short term, we have these solutions from Dan about adding in this certain percentage of RAM every week and so on. So that is great for short term. Long-term solution is we'll have these side chains, and this won't be a problem in the long term at all. I'm fairly sure about long term. Short term, we'll have these issues, and another point for viewers is the whole RAM trading is making EOS deflationary kind of thing. So, yeah.
And the other thing as well, like Dan believes in free market. So if the RAM price has gone up a lot, it would certainly, nothing goes up forever, so it will come down as well. And but I was surprised. I was listening to Kent from EOS San Diego. They did the airdrop for the challenge DApp or token, and he said they spent $200,000 just to buy the RAM.
So, yeah, which is kind of steep, yeah.
Yeah, but it just goes to show, I guess, that they're confident in the system to do that.
Yeah, well, we're very happy that Kent went through with that, because it was quite expensive, and he promised to do the airdrop, and so he went with that anyway, which is quite interesting to see. He's managed.
How do you think he might, recover that cost?
Yeah, that is kind of unfortunate, because once the airdrop tokens are locked in, then you essentially bought that much RAM. You cannot really sell it.
Yeah.
There is theoretically, what is possible is if they want, they could impossible. It is kind of technically hard to he's kind of locked away forever.
If they sell the RAM, then they lose the tokens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and especially if you have it trading on some exchange and so on, once it is given away, you can't really take it back. So, but it's essentially $200,000. And so we mentioned about the deflationary effect. You mentioned good points about the whole idea from Dan about how he likes the market economics and so on.
Yeah.
There's one other thing to remember about RAM is a normal EOS account requires something like 8 KB. The last I checked, EOS was like 1 KB of RAM was something like $4. So around $30 is the cost for creating one account. But the advantage is once you create that account, all transactions are free. So if, let's say, you create a free Ethereum account, you pay a gas fee for each transaction. So the lifetime cost of running on EOS, although you have this initial $30 setup fee, it pays off when you do, let's say, 20 transactions on Ethereum, you've already made your money back. So that's another point on RAM.
So I personally never paid. I paid, I guess, to Ethereum because I was doing it before during the ICO.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So now, if I wanted to create a new account, it would cost $30. Is that it?
Yeah. So exactly. So all the accounts that you created on Ethereum, they are moved in for free.
Yeah.
So you get this 8 KB of RAM for free kind of situation. But any new account to be created on EOS, you have to purchase this 8 KB of RAM, which is approximately $30.
All right. Okay. What else? What about the venture capital funds? That and the EOS blockchain. Can you talk a little bit more about that and how they'll help the application or the developers?
Yep, sure. So EOS has raised something like $4 billion through their whole ICO, and they've committed $1 billion to this EOS, the VC fund. How the VC fund works is they'll match up with a very good existing VC company. So let's say we have, I think it was a few Tomorrow Ventures, and I think it was Galaxy Digital and so on. So what happens with them is they bring in 50% or something like around 50% of the fund. So let's say if they raise 500 million, 50% is from the venture fund and 50% is from Block One, and then they allocate capital to selected DApp developers. And Everypedia is a very good example of the first successful. They have been funded through this program. And interestingly, they have announced that they will airdrop it to the whole EOS token. It's not just to their airdrop is not just to Block One and to their venture capital firm. So that is a very nice thing to see. So if DApp developers do that, it actually adds back a lot of value to the community because these are backed by top VC companies and EOS holders get the airdrop for free. So that's really good. And I hope that continues. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I know it's nice to get the airdrops. I've gotten 9, but that I just want to be clear to viewers that it doesn't mean it's going to be worth loads. They have to be successful projects in the end, right? And that's what the market will determine. And that's interesting. What else? Yeah, can you talk a little bit about the whales and keeping the community honest? And because we saw during the voting for the block producers that there were a few whales throwing their weight around. Do you think that's going to be a problem, or do you think that's going to be, as time goes by, things will, be fairly decentralized?
Yeah, that's a very, very interesting question, and we have to wait and see. So if you look at the ranking tables now, EOS Authority has the highest number of voters. So we have something like 8,500 voters, and that puts us in the top rank among the block producers by number of unique voters. But we are number 12 when you account for all the whale voting and whales and all. But then this is a proof of stake system. It really matters on the whales. Whales have a lot of stake in the system. It's not like, I know we have this democracy system and the whale system, but the idea with EOS is who has more stake really gets to stay the network. So it is, I mean, we have a lot of issues and the community issues, and I mean, these are all solved by education and by healthy debates and things like that. I think, it is. I don't know what the best route is, but it looks like whales have a lot of stake. Their say is really important, and the community unique voting is also very important. So it's just a balance we'll eventually find, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess if you want to really be involved, you need to keep abreast of what's going on, don't you?
Yeah.
Be on the Telegram groups, EOS Authority, you have yours, and other block producers, watch the videos. So just to
just one more thing. That's very good you mentioned that, because there's also this proxy system. It might be hard for a viewer to keep up with every single thing that's going on. So what could happen in future is, Maria, you could set up your own proxy voting system. You decide, okay, I am going to be actively participating in the whole what's happening every day on the chain. And the community can decide, okay, great, I'm going to stake my vote to you, and then you can decide which block producers you like to vote for. So that's another thing with EOS. So as long as the community is educated about all the options, they really don't have to keep up with everything. They can use proxy voting and decide who is the best proxy for them.
Yeah, and I think, that's one of the reasons why a lot of people were skeptical and didn't participate, is because EOS is not run like a corporation. It's like, I remember when you're voting to go, EOS Go, just before the chain was validated, I followed the final vote, and there are people all over the world, different time zones. One Chinese guy was in his car, and it seemed really disorganized, but it got done. Can you explain to people, that find hard that they can't call a head office and say, "Oh, do this for me"?
Yeah, exactly. This is like we had this all the time. So we had things like, "Hey, EOS is just a white paper. Will it ever be delivered?" Then EOS, these different block producers have to get together and launch the chain. Will this ever happen? And they were like, "Hey, it is activated. I mean, the chain is ready. would 15% of the token holders really vote? So we had all these kind of challenges. Eventually, we get onto a phone call, like everybody has their own say. Everybody has, you put in 50 people, the 50 different ideas, but eventually we managed to get through every single one of them in a time and orderly match, which is kind of very interesting to see that this is completely decentralized, but yeah, 50 of them could come to some decision.
Yeah. So to finish off, I just wanted to ask you, where do you see EOS in, like, in 2 years' time?
Yeah, sure. So I think so. This is a very interesting question. This is why we are
2 years is a long time, isn't it? In this,
in crypto space.
Yeah.
In the
Or
whole
maybe I
blockchain
should say a year.
Yeah. So in the whole blockchain space is very interesting and it's very fast moving. But EOS is like, if I was a DApp developer and I looked at the free transaction model, so there is this RAM cost which has to be sorted out. But apart from that, a lot of apps require CPU and net, that is the underlying processing, which is completely free for users. And if you make efficient use of the RAM, you really don't need much apart from airdrops and so on. So I can see like EOS will be the most preferred DApp platform for any DApp developer out there. It's kind of no-brainer. And any successful blockchain platform needs a lot of community support, and EOS has a lot of community support, which is really powerful to take it in the long term. So I can see EOS being the number one choice for block producers to come in number one choice for the DApp developers. It's all the inter-blockchain communication, the transaction speed. You're able to you're able to port your DApp into your own sidechain and connect to the mainnet and so on. So I think it's going to be the biggest DApp platform, just like what Dan envisioned in the beginning.
Well, that's great. Yeah, it's a little bit like Steemit, where I can go and post anything without any cost, right? But what EOS will be is for the developers. They can just develop anything they want there without very little cost, except maybe for the RAM at the moment.
Yeah, exactly. And if you write RAM optimized application, so in a few weeks we'll be launching out an DApp which will just demo that you can really do like a lot of transactions per second. And we're putting out. I'll give you a link shortly. Hopefully in a few weeks. It's just a proof of concept to show people that you can use the whole CPU and net, which is kind of underrated. You can use that with minimal amount of RAM to build really powerful applications. So there's a lot of interesting things coming out.
Okay, great. So so can you, to finish off, tell the viewers where they can find stuff about EOS Authority?
Yeah, sure. So EOS Authority website, eosauthority.com. We have a lot of apps and DApps that we build. We have something like 1.3 million page views in the last month. So we are one of the most high traffic website for a blog producer. And we are very happy that a lot of voters have voted for us. We are maintaining the top position in the number of voters. So we're very thankful and humbled by the response. We have an active Telegram channel with about 3,000 members. It's at EOS Authority Telegram chat. You can reach us on that. We've answered almost 1,000 email support. Just mail us at hello@EOS Authority if you want to contact us with any issues on your EOS. So we're active on email, Telegram, website, all channels.
Yeah, great. And I guess you're focusing just on block producing, or are you also going to help people develop applications?
Yeah. So we have a lot of support queries. We help users with a specific technical issue and so on. So a lot of developers have got in touch on what's the best way. Or even today, we had another developer ask us to review their smart contract. So we do all this for them. So we help developers review their smart contract, check for some security issues, help people with airdrops, even the challenge airdrop. We've talked to Kent, and we have one of our team members are doing the airdrop for them. So we've been very active in helping community with all these kind of things. Please anybody can contact us for help.
Great. Thanks. And I hope we'll be doing a few more of these chats in the future. And it was really nice to talk to you, and I wish you all the best.
Yeah, so thanks a lot for having me, and thanks a lot for getting us involved in EOS.
Well, that's flattering that you got involved because of one of my videos.
Anyway. Yeah, this is great. That's another reason you have to be subscriber to your channel.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.